بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه من والاه ما بعد. So continuing to read from the book Ar-Rāzziyayn wal-Aynayn بتوضيح معاني عقيدة الرازيين, using the sharh of فضيلة الشيخ العلامة ربيع بن هادي بن عمير المدخلي حفظه الله تعالى, the عقيدة of Abu Hatim and Abu Zur'a Ar-Rāzziyayn. Abu Hatim who died 277 Hijri, and Abu Hatim who died 277 Hijri, and Abu Zur'a who died in the year 264. Rahimahumullah ta'ala jami'an. So we're still speaking about qadar, any belief, any correct belief when it comes to al-qadar, the belief of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Last thing we mentioned was the 4 levels of qadar. When we say we believe in al-qadar, then what that means is we believe Allah's perfect knowledge, that Allah has perfect knowledge of every single thing. Before, during, and after, and if it were to take place, even if it didn't take place, Allah had perfect knowledge of it. And number 2, that Allah, everything was written down in the preserved tablet, Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz. Number 3 is that Allah created everything. Every single thing, Allah created it then and brought it into existence. And number 4, the Mashi'atullah, that Allah's will, that Allah willed for it to happen and it happened. So this is what that means when you say you believe in the qadr of Allah Azza wa Jal. So Shaykh Rabi said at the bottom of page 41, من ذلك أفعال العباد مخلوقة لله عز وجل وأعمال العباد مخلوقة لله. That from that is the creation, the action of the slaves. The actions of the slaves are created. They're created by Allah Azza wa Jal. With the fact that Allah created them, the action of the people. فقد منح الله المكلفين العقول والأسماع والأبصار والقدرة والإرادة. هذه الأمور يحاسبون بسببها. Even with the fact that the actions of the servants are created, Allah granted the slaves, those who will be tasked, those who will be burdened, those who will be answered, who will be held to account. Allah granted them intellects. Allah granted them hearing and the ability to see, and He gave them an ability and a will. So these affairs, the fact that they have an aql, the fact that the people have a mind, an ability to discern right from wrong, unlike the animals do. Animals only walk upon what the fitrah they have, and that's it. The fact that we have a hearing and we have a sight, and we have the ability and we have a will, all this combined, because of these affairs, we will be called to account. We'll be accountable for our actions because of these affairs. That a person comes to righteous actions by his own choice. ويأتي الأمر السيء باختياره وإرادته وقدرته. And likewise, a person comes with evil or bad actions by way of his own choice, by way of his own will, by way of his own ability. فَكَتَبَ اللَّهُ ذَلِكَ عَلَيْهِ. So then Allah will write that against him. That will be written against him as a bad deed. So a person knows that when he himself does an action, he knows that it's from himself. When he does a bad action, after knowing that it's haram, for example, a child, or a young man, or a young woman, who his parents tell him, don't do such and such, and don't do such, it's bad for you. And they go out behind their backs and they may do it. They know what they're doing is wrong, and they know they're not forced. So they cannot use it as an excuse. They know what they're doing is wrong. Just like when a person does something good, he knows that he does it on his own accord. But his own accord, his own ability, his own choice is not outside the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. Na'am. So the Shaykh, he says, وَلَا مُنَافَى بَيْنَ مَشِيئَةِ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى وَبَيْنَ كَوْنِ الْعِبَادِ فَاعِلِينَ. لا منافاة بين كون لا يخلق هذه الأعمال وإنشاؤها. لا منافاة بين أن العباد عاملون لأعمالهم مسؤولون عنها. That there's no contradiction between the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal willed these affairs, these actions, and likewise the slave, he does his actions on his own accord. There's no contradiction between the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal created these actions and He willed them, and the slave himself doing them and the slave himself being responsible for the actions that he did. So the slave, العبد هو المؤمن والكافر والبر والفاجر والمصلي والصائم والصادق والكاذب. هذه صفاتهم، هذه أعمالهم وهذه ذنوبهم. That when it becomes to the slaves, and you have amongst the slaves, يعني the slaves of Allah, you have a believer and a disbeliever, a righteous and a wicked, one who prays, one who fasts, one who's truthful, and one who's a liar. These are their attributes. These are their actions. These are their sins. لا يوصف بها إلا هم. They are not to be described with these attributes except them. Meaning that the one who prays, he's going to be described as one who prays. The one who fasts, he's going to be described as one who's fast. The one who's truthful is going to be called truthful. The one who lies, he's going to be called a liar. The one who's a believer is going to be called a believer. The disbeliever will be called a disbeliever. As for Allah Azza wa Jal, He is not to be described with these actions. Even if Allah willed them and He decreed them and He wrote he wrote them upon His slaves and He ordained them for His slaves, because of his يعني لا يحدث في هذا الكون شيء إلا بإرادته. Nothing takes place in this universe except with the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. That there is no creation except that Allah created it subhanahu wa ta'ala. With that, He is not to be described with these attributes. The slave, he fasts, na'am. Allah willed for him to fast, but Allah is not to be called the one who fasts. This description is for the slave and not to Allah Azza wa Jalla izmati wa jalali. Na'am. So these slaves, al-amilun, wallahi wallahu khaliquhum wa khaliqu a'malihim wa hum mukallafun. The slaves, the ones who act, those who do actions, then Allah is their creator. Meaning the creator of the slaves, and likewise the creator of their actions. But they are held accountable for their actions. They're mukallafun. They're tasked, and they'll be burdened, and they'll be called to account for their actions. They're responsible for that which they do. They're commanded to do that which is righteous, and they're forbidden, manhiyun, in doing that which is unrighteous, that which is haram. هم الذين هم يجازون على أعمالهم. These are the ones who will be called to account and rewarded and recompense for their actions. You have a deviant group called the Qadariyya. The Qadariyya, they claim that the actions of the slaves, Allah created them. Sorry, the Qadariyya, we're talking about the Jabariyya, but the Qadariyya, and those who are opposite to them are the Jabariyya. And you have a lot of groups who claim to be Muslim, who still have the Aqīdah of these groups. You have the Qadariyya, who claim that the actions of the slaves, أفعال العباد ما يخلقها, Allah did not create them. That they're خارج عن مشيئة الله. That the actions of the slaves are outside of the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. قبحهم الله, يعني أن لله أندادا يفعلون أشياء هو لا يريدها. That what that belief entails. That belief entails that Allah has rivals. That these slaves, they do actions outside of that which Allah willed. They do actions outside the will of Allah. They do actions without Allah willing to do so. This is a belief which is batil. There's nothing in this universe except that which Allah willed. Because He is a king, He is the owner of every single thing, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the slaves, إن فعلوا فإن فعلهم راجعا مخلوقا لله. That no matter what they do, that their actions are created by Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah says in the Quran, وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَكُمْ وَمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. That Allah created you and that which you do. Allah خَالِقُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. That Allah is the creator of every single thing, from actions, statements, bodies, كل الموجودات, everything that's present, every single thing that's present, then Allah is the creator of all these things. Except Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah is uncreated, and everything besides Allah Azza wa Jal is created. So the slaves who do actions, then they do actions by their own choice. Nobody can come to me except they're lying to themselves, can come and say that they're forced to do this. Some of the people, when they come and they say, يعني, like the Sheikh, he says that they do these actions by their own choice, by their own ability, by their own will. باعتبار هذه الأمور الموجودة فيهم هم مسؤولون عن أعمالهم. That these people are responsible for their own actions because they do it by their own will. So the Qadariyya are upon a يعني عقيدة باطلة. They do not know the unseen. They do not know what's willed for them. For example, if you tell them, these same people, go outside and cross the street, cross the freeway, blindfolded. If Allah wills you to live, it's been written for you. You're forced to do it anyway. So if you're willed, according to what they claim, if Allah willed for you, you're gonna survive. You're gonna live. But they're not gonna do that because they don't know that which Allah has written for them. They have to act and take their means. So likewise here, a person cannot come and say I'm forced. You know, every single person knows that when they do an action, whether they go downstairs to get something to eat, it's by their own choice. Whether they walk to the bathroom, it's by their own choice. Whether they go outside and go to the park, it's by their own choice. When they open up a book, it's by their own choice. If they want to sleep an extra 2 or 3 hours, by their own choice. After they wake up, I'm too tired, I'm going back to sleep. It's by their own choice. But their own choice is not outside the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's not outside the will and the knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal that you join between the two. And about this point, Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan, he mentions, you have deviant groups that play with words. They play with words to try to fool the people. Either trying to fool the people for monetary gain, either trying to fool the people because they themselves conceal kufr, or they try to fool the people because they themselves have a deviance. They have some type of clout, some type of agenda, some type of ideology they want to impose upon the people, and the way we impose it is by finding things that we can twist and turn in order to gain. For like Ikhwan al-Muslimin. Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Murshid, in the newspaper, Sharq al-Awsat, in 2008, in December, on Dhul Hijjah, the year 1429, right now we're in 1443, now, in the year 1429, in the newspaper, Ikhwan al-Muslimin, their Murshid al-Am, he said that he has no problem with the spread of the Shia and will generally support them. He said, his name is Mahdi Akif, the Murshid Ikhwan al-Muslimin Egypt at that time. He said about his support for the Shia expansion, the fact that the Rafida Shia were expanding in the Muslim lands in Africa and Asia and places like this, even South America. He himself said, this Ikhwan al-Muslimin who claim these are the deviants like the Qadariyya, the Jabariyya, who appeared the earlier sects that came, the Khawarij, and the Shia, and the Qadariyya, and the Jahmiyya, and the Jabariyya, who were Jahmiyya, and the Mu'tazila, and the Ash'ariyya and the Maturidiyya, and all these sects that appeared, the Qaramita, and these groups that appeared early. They all come with you trying to twist and turn the text, trying to remove Islam, or trying to bring down Islam, or trying to gain a monetary gain, or they're working for outside forces to distort Islam. As for these deviants, Ikhwan al-Muslimin, when the Shia were expanding, trying to expand that they are to this day, he said, and this is why they claim, the Ikhwanis in the Surriya, when they claim that the Salafis support the Tughat, that the Salafis support the tyrants, and the Salafis support the rulers, and the Salafis do this and they do that. First and foremost, the Salafis do not support oppression. Ahl Sunnah, they apply the text, the ahadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in which you forbade rebelling against a tyrannical ruler and making dua and advising him in private and guiding him in the likes of these things. As for look at the opposite, those who claim to want to rule by the Sharia, those who claim justice. In 1429, Sharq al-Awsat is Ikhwani, the Murshid al-Am, the guide of Ikhwan al-Muslimin. When the people, they accused him, the politicians accused him of supporting the Shi'i, Rafidi expansion, the curses of the Sahaba. When they accused him of wanting to expand and aid in their expansion, and them setting up channels in which they have a direct connection with Tehran, with Iran, at a time in which Misr, even at the time of Hosni Mubarak, at the time when a connection with the Shia were at an all-time low, Hosni Mubarak, he himself used to chase the Shia out. One of the Rafida, he chased him out of Egypt. He was living in Iraq, cursing the Sahaba from Iraq. And during the hukam of Muhammad Mursi, the Shi'i Rafidi came back to Misr and was cursing Sahaba. Back in Egypt, 30 years exile during the time of Hosni Mubarak, came back to Egypt during the era of Ikhwan al-Muslimin, was cursing the Sahaba openly. The people of his village told him, you have a day or a fixed point in time you have to leave. If you don't leave, we're going to do such and such to you. He stayed. He didn't leave. They came back and they beat him. And they beat him and they beat him until they killed him. But this was during the era of Ikhwan al-Muslimin. This Murshid al-Am of Ikhwan al-Muslimin, he said that when he was asked about what the Kuwaiti newspaper spread about him supporting the Shi'i expansion, he said, Ara, this is from his words, Ara annahu la mani' fi dhalik. He said, I don't see any problem with that. He said, we have 56 Sunni countries. 56 في الدولة in the منظمة المؤتمر الإسلامي السنية. We have 56 countries, part of this organization that are Sunni. Why do we fear from Iran when Iran is only one Shi'i country in the world? Is what he said. And he continued, he said, just like I support, and look, he said, just like I support the Iranian nuclear program, حتى ولو كان بغرض إنتاج قنبلة نووية. He said, even if this Iranian nuclear program is to produce a nuclear bomb, I support this. This is Ikhwan al-Muslimin. This is Ikhwan al-Muslimin. What Sharia do they want? These are the deviants you're up against. So that's why it's not permissible and it's not befitting for a person to say, we need to stop refuting the deviants and just teach the people the deen. Refuting the deviants and refuting Ahlul Bid'ah and Kufr wa Zandaqa wa Zayg is from teaching the people the deen. That this man, he said, this Akif, this Murshid of Ikhwan al-Muslimin, when he was asked, and he said, asked about what the newspaper spread about him, if his answer was distorted or if it was understood incorrectly. He said, لا الإجابة صحيحة بلا تحريف. He said the answer was correct. What was written in the newspaper about me was correct without any distortions. The fact that he said that we support them generally in their expansion. Wallah al-Musta'an. He said, he continued, he said, وَلَوْ كَانَ هُنَاكَ نَصْرَانِي مُتَّحَدْ لَوَقَفْنَا إِلَى جَوَارِهِ. He said, if there was a Christian who was being oppressed, then we will stand with him. This is Ikhwan al-Muslimin. This is Ikhwan al-Muslimin. And this is what they support. The Aqīdah of the Rāfidah, the Aqīdah of the Shia Rāfidah is not something hidden from anybody. What they're upon, what they plan to do. And that's why the Muhaddith, Ahmed Shakir, the Muhaddith, who was a judge, who was a top judge in Misr, in Egypt, back more than 50 years ago, more than 50, 60 years ago, he said, Harakatu Shaykh Hassan al-Banna وإخوانه المسلمين الذين قلبوا الدعوة الإسلامية إلى الدعوة إجرامية هدامة ينفق عليها الشيوعيون واليهود كما نعلم ذلك علم اليقين. He said the movement of Sheikh Hassan al-Banna and his Muslim Brotherhood, they have turned the Islamic da'wah upside down to a criminal da'wah. Their da'wah they're calling to now is a criminal da'wah, a destructive criminal da'wah in which the communists and the Jews support, monetarily they support this. We know this with certain knowledge. We know this with certain knowledge. Hassan al-Banna had Ahmed Shakir, rahimahullah ta'ala, Sheikh al-Allama. He had documents because he was a top judge to show their support to, or the fact that the Jews and likewise the communists were supporting them. As you can see, Ikhwan al-Muslimin do not care who they support and when they and how they support them, as long as their goals are being implemented. Look at some of their statements when he claims that we fully support them. They're only a single Shia entity or only a single Shia state. Look at the fruits of that da'wah. Look at the fruits of that da'wah today and what it's led to. That from them they claim in a riwayah wa Tabari, in their book Dilalatul Imama, and Abu Jarud and Abu Ja'far al-Baqir, salawatullahi alayhi, he mentioned about the Mahdi. When the Mahdi appears, he's going to enter the masjid and destroy the wall of the masjid until it falls to the ground. Masjid Nabawi. Then, يخرج أبا بكر وعمر لعنهم الله, is what they claim. وَلَعْنَهُمُ اللَّهِ, that they're going to bring out Abu Bakr and Umar from the grave. It's in page 455 in the Imam al-Tabari. We're going to take out Abu Bakr and Umar from their grave as they are. We're going to bring them with their flesh and with their skin as they used to be. And when Imam Mahdi brings them out in their books, يُكَلِّمُهُمَا فَيُجِيبَانِهِ, that this Mahdi is going to speak to them. This Mahdi does not exist. The Khurafa, Dajjal. He's going to speak to Abu Bakr and Umar, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, and they're going to reply to him. And those who doubt from the Mubtiloon are going to doubt. And they're going to say he's speaking to the dead. So he's going to kill. This is their Mahdi, it's in their book. He's going to kill about 500 of those who doubt inside the masjid. And then يحرقهما بالحطب الذي جمعها ليحرق به علي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين عليهم السلام. كذابون, that he said that the Mahdi is going to burn them with firewood, which Abu Bakr and Umar gathered to burn Ali, Fatima, Hassan, Hussein with. And then they claim كذبا وزورا, that this is the firewood which we have, which we inherit from one another. So they claim that this firewood they're going to burn Abu Bakr and Umar with, they inherited generation after generation after generation. They still have it to this day. Katabun, the Shia Rafida. So this is the Aqīdah. This is the Imamiyah. This is the one who the Ikhwan want to get close to. These are the ones who Yasir Qadi and his ilk claim to support and retract their statements against. These are the Rafida. The fact that they make takfir on Abu Bakr and Umar, he doesn't call them takfiris. Yet Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, who revived the Tawheed, who saved a lot of the people in that time from worshipping graves and idols and stones and trees, yet he calls him a takfiri. Those who Allah made takfir of in the Quran. Na'am. And likewise you can see that the destroying the masajids, the killing the Muslims in the masjids, the burning masjid is the way of the Shia. As here, they're going to burn the best of this ummah. They're going to burn Abu Bakr, so they claim, and Umar inside the masjid. And likewise 500 people. This is the Aqīdah of the Rafida. So the burning and the killing inside the masjids is the sunnah of the Khawarij, and likewise the sunnah of the Shia. As in their own books, that they're willing to burn the best of the ummah inside the masajid. So don't be fooled by the da'wat al-kadhiba when they claim that we're trying to seek nearness with each other. And we love one another, we're upon the same thing, our aqeedah is the same, our da'wah is one, let Allah be the judge. and these kalam fadi which the people they come with. No, the aqidah is clear which they come with. They may hide it at times. But what you understand about the Rāfidah Shia is that when it comes to a time in which they're weak, they hide the aqidah. When it comes to a time when they're strong, they openly come with the aqidah. Taqiyatan. They practice taqiyya. Naam. And likewise they said, the Rāfidah Shia in Illa Shara'i al-Saduq in volume 2, page 580, in Riwayat al-Saduq, in his Illa Shara'i Abdul Rahim al-Qasir, he said, Abu Ja'far alayhi salam, and they lie upon Abu Ja'far alayhi salam, that they said when the Mahdi comes, the Al-Humayra ruddat ilayhi. Al-Humayra will come, yani Aisha, they'll bring Aisha back. Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha. حتى يجلدها لحد until they وحتى ينتقم لابنة محمد فاطمة عليه السلام منها. When they bring her back to life, they will lash her. They will establish a punishment upon Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha until they seek revenge for the daughter of Muhammad, the daughter of Muhammad, yani Fatima alayhi salam, what they mean. Then they said to him, they're going to lash her because of her slander against Ibrahim. Then he said, how is he going to slander? How is he going to lash her now? Why did Allah grant her respite and delay her punishment? He will say, he said, because Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala sent Muhammad as a mercy to mankind, and he said the Mahdi as a revenge upon these people, as a punishment for these people. This is the Aqīdah. This is what they believe. This is the belief of the kuffar. Don't be surprised. That's why when they see these Rāfidah, they come with this Aqīdah or kuffar. This is found in their books. Forget about their tasrihat and that which they claim and that which they say. That means nothing. Go back to that which they're upon. Go back to their Aqīdah. Go back to that which they believe. You find the narration in Bihar al-Anwar. In Al-Bihar al-Anwar, in one of their tafsir books. Their famous books, Al-Bihar, one of their foundational books. That they say in there, that Abi Abdullah Sadiq alayhi salam, he said, هل تدري أول ما يبدأ به القائم عليه السلام. He asked, he said, do you know who the Mahdi al-Qa'im is going to start with? Who the first people he's going to start with? He said, no. He said, يخرج هذين الرتبين الطريين فيحرقهما ويذريهما في الريح. He's going to first begin with these two, bring them back. يعني Abu Bakr and Umar, burn them, and then sprinkle their ashes into the sky, into the wind. This is the Aqīdah of the Rāfidah. This is what they truly believe. And inshallah, next week, I'm going to go into some statements from them that came 50 years ago in the newspaper. And how Khomeini, who's the supreme leader of Iran right now, the supreme kafir, the supreme zindiq of Iran right now, how he came with, how he translated the books of Sayyid Qutb to push their deviance. Inshallah, I'm going to continue reading right now for 5 more minutes from the book of Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan, his Ha'iyya, about the Qadariyya, and then inshallah we'll end it and continue next week. Sheikh al-Fawzan, he mentioned about the Qadariyya. He said the Qadariyya, you have two groups who oppose, who contradict each other, who oppose the belief of Ahl Sunnah when it comes to Al-Qada wal-Qadar. Al-Qada, you have the Qadariyya and the Jabariyya. The Qadariyya are those who oppose, who claim they negate Al-Qadr, they negate the pre-decree. And that's why they're called the Qadariyya. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, as for the fitnatul Qadr, then the first one to speak about Qadr was somebody called Ma'bad al-Juhani. Ma'bad al-Juhani, as Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he said rahimahullah ta'ala, was the first one to speak about Al-Qadr. He was a man from Al-Basra. He had some knowledge. It was said about him, yani his name Ma'bad ibn Khalid. You call Ma'bad ibn Abdullah ibn Uwaymir. يعني معبد الجهني كان يومئذ مع الأشعث وأصابته يعني he was with Ash'ath يعني لأن فتنة بأشعث. He was the first one to speak about Al-Qadr. That he was the one who Abdullah ibn Umar freed himself from. And Umar فتكلم عليه عمرو بن عبيد وجادل به غيلان وغيلان هو ابن أبي غيلان وأبو مروان ابن مالك وعثمان بن عفان وكان عنده حظ من العلم وتكلم به أمام عبد الملك بن مروان واستتابته عمر بن عبد العزيز ثم ظهر منه تكذيب التوبة وصلب على باب الشام. نعم. That he is the one who Abdullah ibn Umar freed himself from. And فتكلم Amr ibn Ubayd spoke about him and debated him. And then Ghilan, he is Ibn Abi Ghilan and Abu Marwan. And likewise, he was from the freed slaves, Abu Uthman ibn Affan. He had some knowledge. He spoke about him in front of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, who saw his tawbah, who saw him to repent. And then later on, he made tawbah, and then he came out openly and denied his tawbah. And this individual was crucified at the gate of Sham. And then came Amr ibn Ubayd. Amr ibn Ubayd, who was from Basra, he died 143 Hijri, died his way to Mecca. He was from the first who spoke about this affair, the Aqīdah of the Mu'tazila and the likes of this Aqīdah. He became an individual who was following Amr ibn Ubayd. These guys were all around the same time. He was the Imam of Kalam, Da'iyatu Zandaqat al-Awwal. That he was the Imam of Kalam, this theological rhetoric, and they called to Zandaqa, and the head of the Mu'tazila. And they were called Mu'tazila, him, Wasil bin Ata, and Amr bin Ubayd. As we know, the I'tizal and the Mu'tazila ascribed to Wasil bin Ata. And likewise, Amr bin Ubayd, he's from the head of the Mu'tazila. And they were called Mu'tazila, يعني from I'tizal, those who withdraw, those who go back, because he withdrew himself from the gatherings of the Imam, Hassan al-Basri. Na'am. So this group, Al-Qadariyya, who were called Al-Qadariyya because they rejected Al-Qadar. And the first one to speak like this was either Ma'bad al-Juhani, and likewise Ghilan ibn Abi Ghilan, and likewise Amr ibn Ubayd, and Wasil bin Ata. These individuals from the first people who spoke about Al-Qadr, who we just mentioned, Wasil bin Ata, Amr bin Ubayd, Ma'bad al-Juhani, Ghilan ibn Abi Ghilan, and likewise Wasil bin Ata, who the Mu'tazila are ascribed to, who withdrew himself from the gatherings, these two, of Al-Hasan al-Basri, who died 131 Hijri, did Wasil bin Ata. Na'am. And Amr bin Ubayd, who died 131 Hijri. The Qadariyya, who are the Mu'tazila. The Qadariyya are the Mu'tazila. And the Jabariyya are the Jahmiyya. The Qadariyya, they say that the slave creates his own actions. That إِنَّ الْأَمْرَ أُنُّفٌ, that the action is unuf, meaning that Allah knows of an affair only after the action takes place. That Allah did not decree a slave's actions. That the actions of the slaves, He founded them Himself, independent from Allah Azza wa Jal. That they believe that the actions of the servants are independent from the will of Allah. La mashi'a, that there's no will of Allah involved in the actions of the slaves. And that's why they are called Al-Qadariyya. That's why they're called Al-Qadariyya, meaning that the slave, he creates his own actions. So here, this Qadari has affirmed two creators. He affirmed two creators, right? Two creators. Allah is the creator, and besides Him, they say Allah is the creator. Wallahu al-Khaliq. And that which is besides Allah is created. And they say that the slave creates his own actions. So this here is shirk al-rububiyyah. And that's why the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that the Qadariyya are the Majus of this ummah. He said, هؤلاء مجوس هذه الأمة ومجوس هذه الأمة. Abu Dawood and At-Tabarani, he called the Qadariyya the Majus of this ummah, because the Majus, they affirm two creators. The Majus, they say that this universe has two creators, that the creator of good is light and darkness is the creator of evil. Again, the Majus, the fire worshippers, affirm two creators. They say the Majus, they say that the light is the creator of good, and they say the darkness is the creator of evil. So here they affirm two creators for the universe. That the light creates good and the darkness creates evil. So likewise, the Qadariyya, they say every individual creates his own actions. So they affirm likewise two creators. One, that Allah created everything except the actions of the slaves. Here with the Qadariyya, that they affirm a number of creators of Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is shirk in the Rububiyyah of the Qadariyya. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ called them the Majus of this ummah, because the Majus affirm two creators, the creator of light, which is the creator of good, which is light, and the creator of darkness, or the creator of evil, which is darkness. So the Prophet ﷺ likened these people, the Qadariyya, to the Majus, because the Qadariyya said, Na'am, Allah created everything except for the actions of the slaves. And this is a belief which is kufri. And then you have those who oppose them from the Jabariyya, and inshallah we'll get into the Jabariyya next week, who outright oppose them, who were the followers of Jahm bin Safwan, who claimed that the slave had no choice, no will. He's completely forced to do all his actions. So again, just to recap, the Qadariyya, from their founders, you had Wasil bin Ata, who the Mu'tazila are ascribed to, Amr bin Ubayd, who were from the early ones who spoke with the I'tizal likewise, and the belief of Al-Qadariyya. And likewise you had Al-Ma'bad al-Juhni, who was from the first ones to speak about Al-Qadr. And likewise you had Ghilan, who were from the first ones to speak about Qadr. So this Majmu'at al-Shar, were from the first ones to speak about Al-Qadr. And the Mu'tazila go back to Wasil bin Ata and Amr bin Ubayd. So if a person asks who founded the Mu'tazila, that is Wasil bin Ata. And from them, Amr bin Ubayd. These are the heads of the Mu'tazila and deviants during that time. And then you had the Jabariyya, who came to oppose them. Who believed that a slave is completely forced. And those who had the belief of the Jabariyya were the Jahmiyya. Jahm bin Safwan and Ja'd ibn Dirham, and this Jama'atu Shar. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Inshallah next we continue. بإذن الله تعالى.